Hey, Sheridan.
How are you?
Yeah, we don't do this. I think she'll do okay.
Way to make this bigger than 100%. I see this.
Thank you.
Yeah, usually, is that right next? Oh, that only makes it smaller, it looks like. It down some, yeah.
So I'm going to ask for this right away before I'll do the
Okay,
pledge.
Okay,
and
yeah,
everything
yeah,
else.
fine.
Yeah, because I started playing in 7th grade. I was field player in 8th grade. I switched to bowling.
Okay.
So, and I played as on JV and then last year was on varsity. So it's like really blown up.
But you like it.
Yeah,
Really like
that's
it.
my
She
sport.
actually, she's over, she switches. So one day she's playing soccer camp. Tonight she's going over to a field hockey camp, She's spending in the morning, she does 7 a.m. workouts. I mean, she's physically ready to do something. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Just, yeah.
But for
It's all right. Good evening, everyone. Before we begin the meeting, in the absence of Mr. Presley, I would ask for a nomination from the board to have one of the members preside over tonight's meeting. Do you have a nomination?
yes. Oh, go ahead.
Mr. Casey.
Okay, we have a second for the nomination. All in favor? Okay, Mr. Casey, again, you thought you were done being president.
Yeah.
Mr. Casey will be presiding over tonight's meeting. At this point, I turn it over to you.
Thank you. So the reason we're in this predicament tonight is Bob Presley had a long scheduled vacation, and Friday night, Todd Gilbert's grandmother unexpectedly passed away in Pennsylvania, and funeral services tonight and tomorrow, so he's down there. So the law and our guidelines require that we have a quorum is 4 people of the board, so we have a quorum. So we will start a meeting. I'll call this to order. If you please join me with the Pledge of Allegiance. The flag is up here. I pledge allegiance to the flag of
the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. So in terms of announcements, tonight is a regular business meeting of the Board of Education. We have a second meeting this month, which will include a board retreat and a study session. In terms of the agenda, if you haven't seen one, we'll have Board of Education comments, then we'll move to public comments, and then we'll move on. We have a number of information items tonight. Some very good news at the start of the information items dealing with tax rates. Always like to deal with those things, especially when it's the way it's flowing this year, so I'm anxious to get to that. That being said, I'll call for comments from the Board of Education. I will also let everyone know, people who haven't been here before, that Sheridan Messier is a student at Shen. She's going to be a junior. We started last January with having a student voice at the table, and Sheridan was the person who was designated by the leaders of the Student Senate. She's been with us, and she will be with us through December, at which time we'll switch and we'll have another person designated. She's just been a bright, great addition to our board, and we're really happy to have her up here with us. Thank you, Sheridan.
Thank you.
So that being said, I'll open this up to Board of Education comments and reports.
Let me go first.
There you go.
Okay. I just wanted to say a few things tonight. Thank you, everybody. I had mentioned last meeting about Karen's Kids, the golf tournament, that the proceeds this year was to benefit the Kickstart our backpack program for the year, our bountiful backpack, and it was a success. The golf tournament was wonderful, and I know Dr. Robinson will be talking with the coordinator of that program and getting ready to kick that off in the fall for our students K through 8. I also, along that vein, will be sending more messages out to the public regarding our Bountiful Backpack program and trying to get more sponsors and donors to give back. And at this time, I'd also like to thank as I go through, I was even driving through tonight, and I'm seeing all the sports and the kids out there on the tennis court, along with the ducks. And I just want to thank all the coaches that take their time in the summertime, as well as the teachers. These kids, there's some kids that are out there at 7 o'clock in the morning working out, and it's really like Sheridan also. It's really great, and I just want to say thanks to all the coaches and the teachers that do that. And just a quick note, I'm also the liaison on the Shenendehowa Foundation, and and we are currently looking for new members to join. So if anybody is interested in that, Jim Grande is the president, or, you could probably reach out to me or Bill. So thank you.
Mary?
It's been relatively quiet for me. I'm looking forward to summer school graduation and the 12-month employees who we don't necessarily recognize all the time, but they're working all throughout the summer and they have a picnic on Thursday, so hope the weather holds for them.
Gary?
I've been invited to participate in a meeting with Congressman Paul Tonko tomorrow at noon. The primary objective of that being that it is a federal legislation, and we'll be talking about the Elementary and Secondary School Act, amendment to the Affordable Care Act, and a number of other things that the federal government is involved in that either directly or indirectly impact us as a school district. Did we have an awareness of the award that our athletic department received on the state level the last time we met?
I think that was, no, we sent it out. It was after the board meeting. We sent out, I think it was in a couple of correspondence.
I wasn't sure about that. Not only did Shenendehowa, well, let me start that over again. Shenendehowa received recognition as the #1 athletic program, public school athletic program in New York State this year. But what makes it especially phenomenal is that it is the second year in a row that we've received that acknowledgement. That's mind-boggling to me. I mean, I am fully aware of the quality of competition and the number of schools participating, and to have been singled out for that distinction 2 years in a row, let alone even once, is just amazing. So I think everyone that participates in the program, and I'm talking about the students, and our coaches and those who administer the program, those who make sure that the facilities are in first-class shape for competition and for practice and so forth, all have a share in the commendation that we received. I thank them for that.
Thank you, Gary. They use a rating system based on wins and where you stand in the league and all these factors for all these various teams that we have. And at the board table here, we have our rating system too. And our rating system is we look at these teams and we look at how many of these teams qualify as student athletes. They have a 90% or higher average in the classroom, because sometimes there's a perception, these people are, the jocks out there, they're doing these things, but what are they doing in the classroom? It's one take away from the other. The proof of the pudding here is that over the last 9 years at least, almost every one of our teams, and in fact, in the last couple of years, both our spring and winter sports teams and fall teams have, every one of them is qualified as student athletes. So it fits together. It's not like a standalone program. There's a lot of literature out there that says an involved student is a student that's going to participate in more than one area and be motivated. And Sheridan shaking their head yes, right? He's one of our student athletes, right?
Say that when I'm in season, I'm a lot more involved in school because you have the set schedule. So it's like my grades are higher, and then like during the off season, my grades are a little bit lower because I have more time to like say, oh, I can do it later. But
Your parents just made up a new chore list for you this year.
Your father is making notes of the fact of the room there, right? But also, just in terms of, this is an important meeting for us. This is the time of the year when you're going to see a long list of personnel appointments tonight. We're still recruiting people, and you'll hear about that. And we vote on our budget in May, and we have projected tax rates, and we tell people what the cost is going to be. This is the meeting where all the information comes together, and we get the equalization rates from the state, and we're able to say this is what the tax rate is going to be. And I think everyone's going to be very pleased in that. We're also going to talk about test scores from the latest results. At the last meeting, we talked about the review that the Capital District Business Review did of schools in the Capital District, and we were ranked in the top 5 in terms of performance. And in terms of the cost per student, we were ranked in the lowest 3, which was a good place to be. We were the only of the major suburban schools to be on both lists in a great position. And then just over the weekend, we were rated again. The Times Union did a lengthy article about test scores, and again, we were rated right up or near the top. We hit 5 on a lot of things, and that's where we were. So glad to see that, and it reflects not only the commitment, I think, of the staff, but the commitment of the community as well. And that's really important, that people are pulling together in the same way. It's student performance, but it's also parental involvement and connected with a staff that cares and pays attention to these things. So look forward to our meeting and going through these things tonight. That being said, we'll move on to public comments. So public comments I see several people who may not have been here before. The public comments are given up here. They're given up here because we have this on camera, and we're going to capture what you say on tape. Actually, it works because we stream these meetings. So we'll invite you up here. This is an opportunity for the public to address the Board of Education. I know there are residents in attendance. If so, please, there's a comment form. We asked people to complete that. They're back on the table. We've changed our procedure and asked people to do that because we want to make sure that anything we need to get back to you on, we've got good contact information on that. The board reminds residents that the public comment portion of our meeting is only one item on a long agenda. We therefore ask that each speaker be as succinct as possible and remarks be limited to 2 to 3 minutes. We'd also expect that residents speak in a respectful and courteous manner so as to model proper civility and decorum for our students, and we promise to do the same. Residents may also contact the board via email at boe@shennet.org. All questions come into the Office of Public Information Officer are shared with the board and our superintendent as appropriate. Policy questions and concerns are typically addressed by the board president, Mr. Presley. Operational questions and concerns are typically addressed by the superintendent and/or designee. Having said that, and given that opening, I would open this up to anyone from the public. You could come right down here and come up here, let us know who you are, and we'll listen to what you have to say. Mr. Connor looks like he's ready to move tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Casey.
Bill Connor, who designed the Clifton Park Half Moon Library.
Geez, I didn't know I'd get an introduction. To be succinct, I thought I'd bring a visual to help be a little quicker here. My name is William Connor. I live at 17 Vista Court in Clifton Park, and I'm here tonight to talk about the proposed sale of the school property, in particular to the town of Clifton Park. There are many of us in the community who recognize the opportunity of this land in terms of public value and keeping it in the public realm. Just to make sure we all know what I'm talking about, this is a view from, say, over top of the high school looking east. So this is the Northway, this is 146, this is Moe Road, and then Clifton Park Center Road is here. And Orangen, Shadacon, the Bentley Senior Citizen Housing, the Southern Saratoga County YMCA, the Clifton Park Half Moon Public Library is there, and the balance of the Shen campus is here. The regional, somebody else make a comment.
I'm glad that happened. Yeah.
The regional shopping area is here. So we see this as an opportunity, being that this land.
Can you hear? I just want to make sure that works. Bill, we may ask you to just stand a little closer to the microphone, or a little bit closer to
Do you want me to hold it?
Yeah, you can do that. Yeah. I just want to make sure you get the picture.
Does that work? Can you hear me?
Take it out if you like.
All right.
There you go.
Okay, I don't dance. But, okay. All right. So this being the property, it's large, it's green, something we like here at Shen, big and green, and it has remained natural because the school has been the custodian of it for so many years. It is a remarkable opportunity in that it sits in the middle of Southern Saratoga County's central hub here. There is an opportunity here to keep it in the public realm, and we understand that the town of Clifton Park has been communicating with the board and has explored the idea of purchasing this land. And we think that this is a very valuable thing for the school in having a good neighbor who has a national reputation for maintaining open space and preserving it. And we think it would be a great asset for all of the people who live around here to use. And in that way, we're asking that the board, in its responsibility, receive a fair value for it and work with the town to do that, and not give up the process of doing that. Work with the town, understand what financial assets the town can contribute to this, and what other things the town can contribute to the school's benefit, so that an agreement can be had where again, this significant natural asset that has forests and streams, 100-year-old trees, can remain at the center of our community and be there for generations to enjoy. So, and I believe there are several people here who have similar concerns. I don't know if everyone wants to talk, but anybody who feels similarly, so, okay.
We'd invite if anyone would like to speak.
So, anyhow, that's really what I have to say. I'll get off the podium here, and I thank you for the time.
Okay, I'll note that we don't normally comment. We do have in the information portion of our meeting, we will discuss the RFP process, and the superintendent will provide a statement from the district. Okay?
And I think, excuse me, and I think part of the comment here is that we would prefer that the school stay the course, work with the town, don't close the door on the town discussions until they receive what they want from the town and are happy with it, and not open it and confuse it with an RFP process.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Would anybody else like to speak? Yep.
You guys hear me?
Sure.
My name is Susan Burton. I live at 338 Riverview Road in Rexford, New York. And I'm here as a representative and executive of the Friends of Clifton Park Open Space. And I wanted to read a prepared statement for the board, so I can give you a copy of right here.
Great.
Currently, the school owns 34 acres of rare open space in the middle of the town's town center zoning district. The school board has talked of selling this property for a fair price, and it is our understanding that the town continues to be interested in buying this property and keeping it in the public domain. Friends of Clifton Park Open Space urges the school board to withhold any RFP for the land sale at this time and give the town more time to acquire the necessary funding to pay the school board a fair price for this land. If the town is engaged in this process, as we believe it is, then the reasons to keep this parcel in the public domain are numerous and compelling. Besides its obvious use as a central park in the most developed part of our town center, there are other advantages as well. It complements existing parks in Western Clifton Park with a generous open space in the eastern part of town. It creates the potential for a less rugged, more groomed park at the hub of town activity as a gathering point for town-wide commercial, civic, and public events similar to Congress Park in Saratoga Springs or the Crossings in the town of Colony. It augments existing public facilities such as the school campus, the public safety campus, the library, the commons, and the Collins Park further west. It would attract shoppers to the economic activity of the surrounding commercial centers. It encourages guests in the hotel district to stay a while and enjoy Clifton Park commerce. It improves property values for the area's attractiveness, and as this parcel is already tax exempt, no property is removed from the tax rolls. It establishes an attractive commercial, civic, and public use anchor for the Southern Saratoga County Chamber of Commerce promotional activities, and it provides a needed walkable area retreat for future multi-use development situated in the town center zone. At this juncture, Friends advocates keeping this parcel in the public domain and urges the board to not pursue further private sale considerations at this time, and with the intent of selling the parcel, then negotiate with the town of Clifton Park to guarantee continued public use and facilities. The creation of a central park on the 34-acre site can create a quality, interconnected open space that links the newly envisioned town center to the Shenendehowa campus and the Clifton Commons. This initiative can complement the suburban fabric of our town and enhance its sustainability, economic competitiveness, and livability. We urge the school board to continue to work with the town to keep this parcel in the public domain, which would accrue many benefits to both the students of the Shenendehowa School District and the citizens of the town.
Thank you, Susan. Any other comments from the public? Yes, sir.
I also have some comments that I'll share with the board. Superintendent Robinson and members of the Shenendehowa School Board, good evening. My name is Daniel Mathias. I live at 7 Birch Hill Road, Ballston Lake, New York. My purpose in speaking tonight is to urge the Shenendehowa Board to give the town of Clifton Park more time in order to put together an acceptable purchase offer for the 34-acre parcel within the town center district. Throughout the United States, communities are looking for ways to preserve open space within their most densely populated districts. All you have to do is Google park in Redmond, Oregon, Pittsford, New York, Durham, North Carolina, or numerous other localities, and you will find these communities actively planning and/or implementing projects involving parkland. These localities recognize one key fact. Every great community has a signature place that serves as a destination, an iconic resource for their city or their town, a catalyst for economic growth. Studies have shown that access to recreational facilities such as pathways and parks increases the likelihood that people will actually take advantage of these resources and adopt an active lifestyle. The idea of a park on this site is Clifton Park's once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to have such a place. It can create a setting for community members to gather and celebrate. It will be a vibrant public space that can encourage special events, arts, music, and fun. And it can offer an enhanced pedestrian environment in and around the park that will stimulate economic activity in the neighborhood. This vision is possible, but we need the help of the school board to give the town the time to make this a reality. I'd like to leave a copy of an article about a project in Buffalo, New York regarding the Erie Canal. It's a story that reminds me of the crossroads that I think we're at tonight. The author is Don Esmond, a columnist for the Buffalo News, who coincidentally retired this past weekend. In the spring and summer of 2000, he wrote over 35 articles about the significance of Buffalo's Canal District and its surrounding area. The state of New York was determined to move forward on a plan that would destroy or at least leave buried the 1839 ship walls and other historic remnants of the canal. Thanks to Esmond's words and the hard work of preservationists, this plan was reversed, and today the area is known as Canal Side. It is the heart of Buffalo's waterfront revitalization and a place where people gather for hundreds of activities, for concerts and cultural events in the summer, ice skating and festivals, and more in the winter. To think that that opportunity was almost lost. While it would be easy to move forward on a plan to sell this land to an eager developer, I urge you to give the town the necessary time to realize the community potential of this site. Just as in the Buffalo example, it will be worth the wait. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Dan.
And I apologize, my printer died, so I only can leave
That's okay, we can.
one
share
copy
that, yeah.
for
We can
each.
share that, yeah. Are there any other comments? Frank? Welcome, sir.
Frank Berlin, 980 Main Street, Clifton Park. I just got back from vacation an hour ago, but I came over here because I think this is an opportunity that we can't miss. I know everybody realizes the importance, and that's done. I have spoke to many people since early spring when a board member of the planning board said to me, Frank, you want to walk in the woods all the time. I want to walk on a trail that's paved. And I thought, I don't know. I'm not too interested in that because we have Garnsey Park and McElroy Park, and they're great places. And then when you folks want to sell the property, I thought, oh my goodness, I'm looking at a place that's like, we planned to have this here. It's like, you really can't say no, but the money is the deal. Money is always the problem. I am a member of the Friends of Open Space. I'm on the Town Open Space Committee. I'm on Preserving Land and Nature on Plans Committee. I think I see that people can get things done, but we need time. And I would like to have you wait, and maybe we can work out some way to have some type of fundraiser or something that people gave $10 or $15 and we'll put your name on a plaque and say, you supported this park and helped us fund it because it's a great opportunity. And I think everybody's level enough. I didn't want to say I want to lock the school board and the town board in the same room and not let you out, Dr. Robinson, until this is agreed to. No. But I really think that everything's going to turn out all right. We got a great town. We got great trails. We got great parks. We've been working on things. We have an open space coordinator, and I really think that this is going to be our Congress Park. It's going to be, it's what it is. It's going to be. If it's not, I'm going to cry, I'll tell you. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Frank. Thanks for your leadership in the town. Anyone else like to speak to that? Yes, ma'am.
I'm Emily Connor. I'm a resident currently of Saratoga Springs, New York, but I grew up in Clifton Park. I'm a Shenendehowa graduate. Great to hear that about our athletic programs. That's great to hear. I moved back after traveling for work. I'm on the environmental corporate team for General Electric. After 10 years, what I found is meeting people from this area are proud to be from this area. I'd like to speak on behalf of people from maybe my generation who are starting families and buying homes. And I think what you'll find is if you look at my generation, we want walkable communities. People who move back to the area similar to me to be near family, to be back in this great community are moving to Troy, they're moving to Saratoga, they're moving to Albany, they're not moving to Clifton Park. If they want to raise families, they are moving to Clifton Park. And I think what we're seeing too on the environmental realm is the future for our children and our education, exposure to nature and the importance of that and the opportunity to learn is a tremendous opportunity that I think this preservation could result in as well. So thank you very much.
I didn't catch your name.
Emily Connor.
Emily Connor, because Mrs. Stevenson is going to talk to you about one of those people for the Shen Education
She lives in
Foundation.
Saratoga.
Yeah, but she's moving down here. Any additional public comment? Thank you all for taking your time and coming. We do have on the agenda 2 items tonight, one in information and one on action items that deal with this. You'll probably learn more as we talk about from the information item. So thank you for the public comment at this point. We'll move to Superintendent Robinson. You're going to share, I think the board has seen it already, but assignments, right?
Sure. First of all, we don't have students tonight, but it's just a customary thing. Not necessarily meaning Sheridan. We usually have student representatives from the student council here. And obviously, we're not in session, so therefore we have no students. Just a couple of comments. The board liaison Board members have seen this, and I'm just sharing it again to make sure that there are no changes, because tomorrow we'll email this document to the respective principals, because they're all waiting to see who's going to be assigned, particularly the partnership teams, as well as district level committees. Board members are highly involved in various school committees, and certainly I think the public appreciate that it's more than just a meeting on a Tuesday night, that board members are here, quite often involved in many things. So I didn't hear any changes from members beyond what was already presented, so I'm making an assumption that we're okay with liaison assignments. So it's great. So
You want to move into information items?
let me just go back to this. So just a couple quick little announcements before we go into information items. One, Mrs. Stevenson mentioned the backpack program. I just want to clarify what people, because people think backpack thing is school supplies. It's actually a food program where we identify students based upon free and reduced lunch or other factors that we know. The reality of it is we have many students within our school community that often go home and don't have the same food capacity as many of us have that are in this room. So we're expanding the program. Currently, we have a program at Arenda, at Shattuck and Ranjan, and the Coda Middle School recently started a program. We're looking to expand the program to all of our elementary schools and all of the middle school. The high school started a program this past year, but it's not necessarily looking at food. It's looking at more personal care items. And that program at the high school has been beyond, I think, initial thoughts in terms of the potential needs and, more importantly, the contributions by the community. So the backpack program is through the Northeast Regional Food Pantry, and we're in the process of fundraising. Pretty substantial program, because when you think about the reality of it is we really have kids that, in many cases, the last full nutritious meal they have is on Friday between 11 o'clock and 1 o'clock until they come back to school again Monday between 11 o'clock and 1 o'clock, and we know that for sure. And so we really want to get the community support, be it individual members of the community or businesses to provide sponsorship. Information is available on the website. We certainly, if anyone has interest in sponsorship, please contact us. Please contact the Northeastern Regional Food Pantry. Any funds donated go specifically to the Shen program, which is what we call the Bountiful Backpack Program. We're looking to provide upwards of about 160 to 200 kids for this current school year. So a significant dollar amount, but it's something that when you think about the necessity of food is something that we absolutely need to do. So again, if there's anyone who have an interest, please reach out to my office, or quite frankly, if you have interest, any board members will certainly relay the information. But please, contributions are greatly appreciated. Monetary contributions are greatly appreciated.
Just mention, just because I've checked on this, the Regional Food Bank has a separate account for this program, and people can write their checks, tax-deductible checks to them. The cost for one student for, I think they're considering a 30-week program, is $161. That will provide the backpack with the food on the weekends for 30 weeks, and
Every
food
Friday.
Every Friday supplied to them. Backpacks are coming in as well, but that just to give people a range of what we're talking about, and people can sponsor part of one of those as well.
And just another quick date, Mrs. Blaber mentioned a 12-month picnic on this Thursday, the 11th. It's something that we have traditionally done to show our expression of gratitude to those employees who are here. We call the people who are like Santa's elves who do all the work, and when everybody returns, everything is back in place perfectly. So kudos to our 12-month employees. New teacher orientation is on the 22nd. Traditionally, and Mr. Presley is prepared to speak on behalf of the board to welcome our new teachers. Again, we'll have a significant number of new teachers, which is always a good thing in the sense that we have a constant churning of employees within the system, and so we're pleased to do so. The summer school graduation is on August 18th. It's at 6. In the past has been traditionally 1:30, but they moved it to the afternoon, evening, the extra 6:30 on August 18th. So certainly we're appreciative of board members being present, and we really see this in the same level of importance as we see graduation at SPAC in June. So this will be here in High School West Auditorium on the 18th. at 6:30.
For sure.
That's my last piece of information, unless you have something differently. I'll confirm and get that information out to you as a board. So we have a couple information items I just want to highlight. The first one being our property tax levy information, and this may be, oops, Vanessa still has the wrong link. Oops. It's my technology, lack of. So a couple of things just want to highlight for the board. As Mr. Casey pointed out, every year we do our budget process and we make some estimation of the potential tax impact as a result of the budget. And first of all, I'm pleased to say that what we projected through the budget process and our final outcome is significantly less. And so through the budget process, we were projecting a tax rate, true value tax rate, recognizing that we have 6 different municipalities that make up the school district. So the true value is a combination of all those. At about $17.57, we're coming in at a true value tax rate of $17.29. A couple points I just want to point out here. Tonight, the board will be asked to approve the tax assessment, not necessarily the tax rates, because that's a calculation. We're pleased that for the second year in a row, the tax valuation for the town of Clifton Park went down for the second year in a row. And if you see here, the tax rates have been generally flat over the past 4 years. I highlight Clifton Park because probably 60% of our revenues comes from the town of Clifton Park, and a significant proportion of the balance comes from the town of Half Moon. So when we look at tax impact, we certainly look at those two towns in terms of where the revenues for taxes are coming from. And as you see here, the tax rate for Half Moon is going from $29.47 to $29.56, a 0.3% increase, so very minimal. So very flatline tax rates, which is good news because one of the things that we've been trying to do over the years is to expand our service capacity to students, but yet maintaining a very flatline tax impact. And this certainly shows it for the past 4 years. As I'm going along, if there are questions from the board, we can certainly entertain those questions. I won't necessarily go through all the other forms, which is kind of difficult to see on here. This is an evaluation. If we're looking at the final evaluations of properties within the respective municipalities that make up the school district: Clifton Park, Half Moon, Malta, Waterford, Boston Spa, and Stillwater. Again, the Stillwater portion is very small. When you think about we generate the valuation, the assessment valuation of all the properties, about $6.7 billion. 3.8 of it is from the Clifton Park and 2 billion from Half Moon. So those two municipalities make up almost the entire assessment valuation of the Shen district. And so this gives you some good news. The good news is that we're seeing growth. The valuation of properties are growing within the school district. And so that's a positive thing. But the largest portion, monetary-wise, dollar-wise, the largest growth dollar-wise was in Half Moon. And so that's somewhat consistent with what we have been seeing in terms of the expansion of residential, particularly developments in the town of Half Moon. So this is just an indication of the property valuation as we move forward. I don't know if you had
Any questions from the board?
Just one.
Gary.
I see that Stillwater's essentially doubled over our estimation. Is that true growth, or is that a reevaluation of their property?
Well, it's for Stillwater. Stillwater is part of it is true growth. There's a lot of growth, particularly now with the Global Foundries impact. We're not seeing a lot of that per se. We're seeing a little bit of it in the lower portion of Malta. Most of Malta is actually in Boston Spa. We're seeing some of Stillwater, which if you go on Farm the Market Road at back end, we're starting to see some development, but we don't have a lot of property within the school district boundaries. But we're seeing some of that is in terms of real growth. It's larger residential growth that's impacting those areas more so than not.
Any additional questions?
So tonight, later on, the board will be asked to approve approve the assessed valuation, the tax levy, which will be used to generate the revenues. The significant portion of 73% of our school district revenues come from property taxes, and the balance come from state aid and other sources. So a second thing that I never want to start open this file, but 5 years ago, actually 6 years ago, the State Comptroller's Office started a statewide process of auditing schools. And this was unfortunately after a major fiscal scandal in a downstate school district. And through legislation, they have passed legislation say that every school is to be audited on a regular cycle. Shen was one of the first schools to go through the audit process. I think sometimes being close to Albany is a curse because you're often, and we're big and close to Albany, so we're the perfect target. 5, 6 years ago, that audit was squeaky clean. Very, very positive audit. It was great for the school district. It was also great for the State Comptroller's Office because their staff actually learned how to do a very comprehensive audit because we're a large system. So it was a great opportunity for them as well. They recently came back and did an audit looking at our claims process, our billings process for the most part. And Mr. Casey pointed out again last week, but we have to kind of formally present this to the board, that this is one of the most interesting audit finding because there's no finding. Literally, they came through and the only comment the gentleman said, well, we audited, we did a lot of tests, and there are no issues that we can document per se. So if you read the State Comptroller's letter, you wonder what they actually did because there was nothing that they found, which is a great, again, compliments to Mrs. Wetmore Chase and her staff for the due diligence that we exercised from the financial piece of it. So again, I just wanted to share that with the board because from a public meeting, this is now finally public. It was somewhat embargoed until the recent issuance of that. So I wanted to share that with the board as we move forward. The second piece of the third document that I want to point out, and certainly we'll share this document. By the way, this entire agenda for the board and the attachments are available on the website. So if somebody wants to go back and actually access these documents and see them, they're all there and they're always archived on the district website. The document I want to point to is the RFP document, and certainly we heard comments tonight about the land purchase RFP. This has been a process that's been in the works for, I would say, at least minimally 3 years, if not longer, that we've been going through this process. About 8 months ago, we went through an issuance of the RFP. We actually had in hand proposal, and at the 12th hour, there was some withdrawal of that proposal. So I think it's important for the certain public to understand the backdrop that this has been a multi-year process, not only with RFP, but also initiating conversations with municipalities, namely the town of Clifton Park. And so to be clear with what the RFP process does, it essentially allows all parties, town and private sector, to submit a very comprehensive proposal for the board to review. The beauty of it is that one couple of things, the process ensures transparency, which is always the thing that we have to worry about, that people understand, the public understand, because the RFP, as I said, the document is online. Everyone can see it. If you have interest in submitting a proposal or not, it's there. It's a transparent process in the sense that the analysis by the board has to take place in public. The approval has to take place in public. So it eliminates any semblance of, and the law speaks very clearly to this, of collusion and or favoritism. And so that's the reason why we're exercising this process, to ensure that piece of it, one, allows all parties to play. And again, I want to emphasize particularly the town, because we've had some conversations with the town. The board has the benefit, if you will, of not being restricted only to the highest bidder. Clearly, by law, we have to do our due diligence in terms of getting appraisals, which we have done. We have 3 separate separate appraisals because we have to have multiple appraisals. And that creates a baseline value of the property, so to speak. And so it gives us some comparison to look at proposals. And so this whole notion of value that the board looks at is not only from a monetary perspective, cash value, but also what other benefits that provide as a part of it. The proposal allows municipalities, private companies to submit that as a proposal for the board to consider. So it's not a conversation. It's not a word of mouth. It's not a promise and a wink. It's not a handshake. It's documentation of here's what we're proposing, and we can go through it and see what's the real value to it as well. And so that's the RFP process, and I just want to make sure that it's clear that the issuance of an RFP isn't authorization of a sale. It's a process to gather information and from interested parties to do so and ensure that the board is exercising its fiduciary responsibilities. And again, the big piece of it, because we've seen many cases or enough cases of the collusion issues that end up in court and costing a lot of money because people making accusations of handshake deals behind the curtain, so to speak. So that's a big piece of it. Just to highlight, and I want to emphasize this because later on the agenda, item 10 on the agenda, the board will be asked to approve the issuance. And a couple of things that the board should contemplate as a board is the time frame. And I share that because we have the timeline here, but certainly as a part of our process, the board can discuss timeline and timeframes. And the recommendation is to issue the RFP. The question is timeline and timeframes in the RFP. And I throw this piece out. So right now, the RFP timeline as stipulated on page 2 is issuance effective tomorrow, August 10th, commencing until September 30th. And so it's a month or so, beyond a month or so process. And then the board will have essentially till the next meeting to look at the review, look at those kind of things. And if there is a sale in terms of a proposal that's worthy of a sale until January 10th, 2017 to close on that sale. So there's a lot of legalities. If you think about selling your house and think about all those kind of things, the same kind of process that the board would have to go through, and this happens at a public meeting for the Board of Education. So that's an RFP process, and I think it's very important for the public to know that it's a process the board needs to make so we can actually start gathering proposals. And it's not promises, conversations, it's actual documentation of proposals, and that's what RFP process does. I don't know if you have any questions from board members.
I was wondering if perhaps we're aware that we had previously looked at a different timeline that would have been more accelerated than the one we're looking at now.
Yes.
And the reason for changing that was to allow the town of Clifton Park additional time to do whatever they needed to do.
That's correct. The initial, it's not even initial, I guess it would have been the second time going through the RFP process. The timeline would have had the date ending the beginning of September. However, after some conversations with town representative, the decision was to extend that piece even more so. And so again, I throw it because I think once we get to that action item, there needs to be some discussion by the board in terms of finalizing whatever that time frame might be when we get to that point. Any other questions on that? The second piece, and I have to apologize for the magnitude of things here on the screen. We just had a new IKE system put in, and while it's supposed to be better, somehow we have to make the adjustment because everything went smaller. So I have to apologize for the audience of not being able. Typically, they would cover the entire screen, but it's probably my inept ability with technology. It's covering that screen, but it's not covering this screen, and I'm not sure why. However, one of the things that Mr. Miller will come forward to talk about test scores, and just a couple of things I just wanted before you come forward, Bob. Before Mr. Miller comes forward, and Mr. Casey alluded to it, I was actually out of town, and a colleague who saved and shared this article with me because unfortunately their district was in the bottom half, And it was sent to me to show that you guys are in the top half and we're in the bottom half, and it was kind of like, what are you doing right? And in fact, I shared with the board because I'm meeting with a colleague from that district tomorrow morning to talk about some of the things that we're doing here at Shen. We don't have a secret, we don't have a panacea, we don't have the magic pill, but we do have some quality programs that we have devised over time that we think are lending to some of the certainly sustaining of scores and the improvement of scores over the years. And so I'm meeting with a colleague tomorrow morning to have some of that discussion related to some of the things that we're doing here. This article really put into perspective how the scores, because you hear Mr. Miller talk about, proficiencies being in the mid-50s. And so you look at that and hear, wow, mid-50s, that's still not that great. Because once upon a time before before the state changed the assessment practices, we were always in the mid-80s, lower 90s. And the change, we knew that was coming because it put in much more rigorous assessments, and we're making the recalibration as we move forward. But the context, or should I say the relative comparison becomes important. And I think this article in the Times Union really did a great job of capturing those kind of things. And so, for example, when you look at for ELA proficiency, Shen is number 5, certainly in the top 10 of proficiency. For math, similarly for math, again, Shen being in the top 5 for proficiency. So it's important for the board to not only see our specific ratio, but also the comparison to other quality school districts and some of those districts that are either below or above. And while we don't necessarily stake our reputation on test scores, it serves as a gauge. And so I kind of look at it as being in your automobile, when the little light come on with the little wrench, you know you have a problem. Or when your fuel light come on, you have a problem. So we kind of use this as a gauge. Are we on the side of growth and improvement, or are we on the side of regression? And certainly the data indicate that we're on the side of growth of improvement, and that's where we want to be. I mean, ultimately, we want to continue to do the things and invest in the programming services to help our students perform. And this is just one measure, so I want to put that in context as Mr. Miller walked through some of the data points.
Yes, Dr. Robinson mentioned when the 3 through 8 tests
Can you just scoot over so that
we're in the 2005-2006 year, which is when they really rolled out the comprehensive 3 through 8 program. Most of our scores for proficiency, which would be 3s and 4s, were between 92 and 95%. And then when they did the recentering of those scores a few years later with Commissioner Steiner, they dropped down into the 80s. And then when they did further recentering of the scores and then improved, or I should say, increased the difficulty of the exams, then they dropped down into the 70s and then the 60s and then where we currently are now. So I always try to say to people, so that you don't stress the tests, is that it's kind of like the 2005 test was who can run a mile in 20 minutes. Most of the people in the room could do that. And then the next iteration was who can do a 15-minute mile, and a few people dropped off, and then who could do a 10-minute mile. And now we're down to a 6 or 7-minute mile, so there's a lot of people that have fallen off on that. But it doesn't mean that our students are not well educated or well prepared. It just means the assessments that they're taking are more difficult. And so I think people should keep that in mind when you look at these items. So with that, which one do we click, Dr. Ross?
Just scroll. Just use scroll
button?
down. It's a PDF.
Okay. So here's the first thing that gives us some kind of indication of what we're talking about for Shenendehowa. The top, the blue lines here, this is the New York State reported scores and proficiencies for the last 2 years. ELA, 31.3%, scored a level 3 or 4. This current year, 37.9. They increased 6.6. The math was 38.1 in 2015. This past year, 39.1. They increased 1. Shenendehowa in 2015 in the ELA was 52.3. So you're talking about a 20% difference in proficiency increase on Shen's side. This past year, we were 56.7. Our change was a growth of 4.4. Math, our proficiency 2 years ago was 62.5, and this past year just ended 64.2, a 1.7% increase. So you can see that Shenendehowa has consistently been above the state in all of those. I'm guessing the state only really threw these two out because it was the 2 years that had the highest amount of opt-outs. So I'm figuring out that that's why they did that particular piece. On the next slide are the percent of test refusals. And just to give you an idea, New York State defines a refusal not the medically excused, which are so we had like 10 medically excused in our district. They're not in the refusals, or ELL students wouldn't be they're in the not tested group, but they're the not tested group that take a different test. And there's a few 1% of our special ed students the alternate assessment. So the state did not give specific numbers. They are in that blue column. These are the Shen columns. They didn't give a percent refused from the 14 school year, but we have that number. We actually have one from the 13 school year. It was less than 1%. And then 3 years ago, it was 4%. And then the last 2 years, it's been 25%. That's our tested population. That's the number of refusals, just so that everybody has that. And again, that's our rate. So our refusal rate is slightly higher than the state average.
And so just for common jargon, what people refer to as opt-out. We don't call it opting out, it's you refusing to take,
Right.
just to make sure that you're saying the same thing.
And Bob, there's no, these numbers that show performance and how the students do, those opt-outs have no impact on that, right? Or
They have no impact. Well, I shouldn't say they have an impact on the score. They have no impact on the accountability like
Okay.
they used to.
Yeah.
Because the NCLB provisions of penalty for lack of 95% participation are not there. Federal government still wants a 95% participation rate, but they've removed the penalty phase by leaving it up to the states. So just so that people understand.
If we were to make comparisons between our rate of not taking the test and other suburban districts, we probably would be more comparable than the overall rate.
Yes.
Well, just to give you some perspective, looking at other suburban districts, and I try not to use other district name, but the range is from low of 12. In fact, there's only 1% 12. Most people fluctuate between 21 and 32%. So Bob, if you go back to that slide again. So if you look at our 25 range, we are very much within that ballpark of where suburban schools are. And that's an interesting dynamics, because what they're looking at now, the state's trying to figure out is where were the greatest pockets of opt-out. Is it an urban versus suburban versus rural versus what? And try to see if there's any trends to those communities. And I think we're kind of waiting to see if there's enough information yet to draw any conclusions, because 2 years doesn't necessarily make a trend. We hope that it doesn't continue, that we have a trend, but it just gives some perspective in terms of where we are in comparison to other suburbans.
Has there been anything done to possibly lower the rate of students refuse?
The refusal piece, actually, this year, we saw reductions largely at elementary schools. We ironically saw increases at the middle level. And to some degree, some of that was because of some differences in middle school assessments. And we saw everything from parents wanting to say, I don't think my kid is good in math, so we won't have them take the math, but they're good in ELA. And all of a sudden, this became almost kind of like going to the buffet kind of thing and picking and choosing, which I just think is just wrong, because it doesn't necessarily give an opportunity for us to really get a gauge on where kids are on the progression. Because from our perspective, while we're even talking about the data tonight, the whole 1 through 4 scale of proficiency, the information becomes useful for us because it does give us a gauge of where kids are, and more importantly, what do we need to do to prepare? While there isn't a correlation between, if a kid is a 2 in 3rd grade, doesn't mean that kid is not going to graduate from high school, because we're seeing it. So the tests aren't correlated, elementary to middle to high school. There's no correlation in terms of the test construction themselves, but it does give us some information from it. And the good thing this year that was quite, after a lot of appeal from the state by the public and schools otherwise, is that now we have more test questions to actually analyze, to see actually how kids did. Before, we just had a statistics, a number that we're trying to draw conclusions from. Now we actually have test questions of kids, so we can start looking at patterns. If a lot of kids are missing this particular type of question, is it a curricular issue? Is it an instruction issue? What is it that's driving those kind of things? And one of the things that we have is the school district, which we'll be publicizing an updated version pretty soon, is a continuum of all our courses from K-12. So as a parent who's entering kid in kindergarten, or better yet, the parent who's going to enter kid in 2017, who should be the class of 2030, can be able to look out and say, here's how my kid is going to progress through our system. And so because we have that, and because we have curriculum aligned, we can then start seeing where we have some gaps based upon some of the assessment scores. This is just one data point, though. One data point. We do a lot of internal assessments ourselves to get better, or should I say richer, more accurate, personalized information on kids. But this is certainly gives us comparison, particularly looking at across the state, because it's not comparing Shen to Shen only, but it's comparing Shen to every school of comparable like students across the state. So we can see how a typical suburban kids from this type of demographics compare to a suburban kids from another type of demographics, and the impact of that. So it's a lot of data analysis that we can take from what's being presented here.
I'm a little bit surprised that the number of people that did not participate continue to go up this year. I know that the test is still by the same vendor. That won't be until next year if the vendor changes. But on the other hand, the state did try to respond by shortening the tests and by eliminating the time limit on the tests, and I would have thought that perhaps that would have
They did change the vendor, too.
They're going to next iteration.
Questar's a new
doesn't
vendor.
happen until next year.
And they did do those things, and in some areas there may have been differences, but that's what our numbers are.
Yeah.
I mean, from 4 years ago, less than 1% to that.
Okay, thanks, Bob. Sorry, didn't mean to prolong.
Nope. So this is a 3-year Shen overview for ELA and for math. There's a 13-14 school year, 14-15, 15-16. Same thing with math. What I'd call your attention to are a couple of different things. You see a decrease in the number of percent of students scoring level 1, which is what you want. You want people to score higher. You actually will also see in ELA a decrease in level 2s. You'll see an increase in level 3 and an increase in level 4. So that's all things that you want to see. Math's a little different, not much, but a little different. The percentages are a little higher. They've always been on standardized tests, not just for Shenendehowa, but New York State and nationwide. Math scores tend to be a little higher than the ELA scores. So level 1, you have a decrease again in the number of scores at level 1. You have a decrease at level 2. Level 3 is a little stagnant, actually a bit of a decrease there, but we have an increase in level 4, which is what we were looking for. So some of our 3s have moved up, and some of our 1s have gone to 2s, and some of our 2s have gone to 3s. I think more of our 3s went to 4s in math than before. So the trend on that is pretty solid. We continue to move up. We continue to regain ground, if you will, that was changed when cut scores were changed and test questions were changed. So my point is that the change in curriculum, the change of instruction, and the other things that the people of the district are doing are paying off in these results over time.
Kind of interesting to note, I think a couple of years ago, because how it was, we looked at scoring a 2 as opposed to 3, and whenever there were a lot of people on that borderline, and we saw a big shift from 2 to 3. This time, at least in the math, over the 3 years, it looks like scores are relatively stagnant. The shift really is more remarkably at the 3 to 4.
And the score bands are very different. Level 1 is huge. Level 1 is from the lowest score.
65 and below.
You know,
And they've changed, the score bands have
and the
changed
score
from year to
bands
year.
changed every year. They did not change from last year to this year, which then the cut points didn't change. But the score bands are not all the equal distance on points.
Good, thanks, Bob.
This is just a look at our detailed view. This isn't percents, these are just actual numbers of students. So 13, I know it's really hard for anybody beyond the table to see it, but 13, 14, 14, 15, and 15, 16, ELA, math, and this is the number of students at level 1, 2, 3, and 4 over those years, the total number of students tested, the mean scaled score, and then the pink side over here is your not tested information. You can see we have 10 medically excused in 13, 14, 2 in 14, 15, and 4 in 15, 16. And then down here, the numbers are slightly different for math because, as Dr. Robinson indicated, the general body of students that take it is the same, but there are a few differences here and there. We tended to have a few more refusals at the math one for whatever the reasons were. It's also the second test given. So I would just put that out there as well. And again, our tested, not tested numbers, not percents, but actual numbers. So I just thought that would be helpful for the board to see the actual numbers as well. What you see here is this is overall Shenendehowa as a school district, grades 3 through 8. There's ELA, third grade, math, third grade. It goes right on down through here. These are the mean scaled scores. The scaled scores are not the same at every exam at every level.
What happens in grade 7 and 8 in math? We see the scores in the 6th grade at like 47%, and then all of a sudden, boom. Well, is it the curriculum? Is it the test? What is it?
I mean, there are a lot of factors at play, Gary, and that's why it makes it so difficult, because if it was simple, we could have just moved one lever and have everything change. One, yes, there's a curricular shift. In the same way there's a curricular shift from 5th grade to 6th grade, there's a curricular shift because 7th and 8th grade kids are getting into the Regents sequence. So we have kids, in particular celebrated kids, are taking actually even algebra Regents level in middle school. So by that very nature, the curriculum shifts quite a bit into 7th and certainly into 8th, because at this point we're really preparing kids for the rigor of the Regents curriculum at high school. So that's a part of that. Also part of that too, some of it contribute to the fact that a lot of attention has been paid, particularly 6th grade math, over the years because of the significance of the shift from 5th to 6th. That's a huge shift for many kids, and so part of the method to the madness is if we can get kids stabilized, if you will, in the 6th grade as they approach the rigor of 7th and 8th, we see it. Because when we look at the math passage at high school, it also continued to go up. However, the piece that we're seeing at high school is that we have a lot of kids passing, but not at the highest levels. And so one of the things that we're looking at high school is not necessarily just passing the Regents exam, but pass the Regents exam at the mastery level. So that's the next shift that we're embarking upon, or have been embarked upon for the past several years. And we've been having these conversations with the board all the time. And so that's why some of this data gives us some indication of are we progressing in the right pattern, so to speak. And we're seeing those things as we look across levels. And in a minute here, we won't necessarily walk through every school, but we have the data for every school. We see also certain schools that are not as high as other schools, and to put that in a context, and I just had a conversation with two different principals last week as part of the evaluation process of principals. You know, if you kind of look at this from the whole notion of we're all running this 50-mile race, and some people will shoot out of the gates and they might be at mile marker 10 while you might be at mile marker 5. If you start getting discouraged because they're at mile marker 10, you can drop out of the race. First, recognize at the end of the day, we're all going to run a 50-mile race. Our kids are going to have to get to that completion point. The completion point for us is graduate from high school. And so the question then we have to gauge is what else do we need to do to ensure that they're on a steady pace to complete this race? And so when we look at the whole diversity of scores or range of scores across the various schools, yes, certain things give us pause. And the pause is to say, what else should we be doing? And you'll hear in next board meeting, we start talking about district goals. We're talking about things such as, again, revisiting our AIS processes and some of those kind of things to make sure that as we get better knowledge, better information on kids, better knowledge, better information on curriculum and pedagogical practices, we're making those adjustments. And so the 6th grade piece, some of that is some of the very deliberate adjustments that we made in 6th grade math that's happening, and we see that's going to transition into the middle school as we're making, because one of the recommendations will be coming to the board at some point in the fall is to look at instructional materials for math for 7th and 8th grade, because we see that we need to make some further curricular adjustments to make sure that we keep in pace. I mean, long answer to your short question.
So as part of that, like, the changes have worked their way through the cohort up to 6th grade, and we may be in to see something in 7th grade next year and 8th grade.
And the board will be hearing recommendations come in the fall. We've been looking at that quite a bit in terms of instructional. Dr. Wood has been spending a lot of time with the middle school folks because, as you know, an adoption of a curricular program, textbooks, otherwise, is something that's going to live with us for 5, 7, 10 years. And so we really want to exercise the due diligence of making sure that what we recommend, regardless of all the political stuff that's happening out there about Common Core otherwise, or what it's going to be called, that becomes relevant to us. And I'm not being arrogant to say that. That is absolutely irrelevant to us as a school district because we understand and know what kids need to be successful in high school, understand and know what kids need to be successful in college, understand and know what kids need to be successful in career if they choose not to go directly to college. And so we're trying to build around that to quite frankly withstand whatever political dynamics may take place. And so we spend a lot of time really analyze what we're investing in. And as you recall, we invested at the elementary level a year ago, a whole new math series, a whole new elementary series to really, again, prepare kids for the much rigorous standards that they'll be facing, particularly in high school.
Also, the 8th grade math students that are accelerated, who are taking the high school Regents courses, they're not in those numbers. They're taking the Regents. They're not taking 8th grade math.
Bob, can you just go to the last slide with the next steps? Because I think this, so a couple of things just wanted to back to Mr. DeLatto's question about a lot of analysis of data and not only just analysis of data, but transferring the data information, using it to make good decision, instructional decision. That's taking place now in a lot of curriculum revision. We have a lot of folks this summer, for instance, doing professional development and curriculum work. And looking at the professional development, the board will hear in September when we talk about professional development plan that the board is going to ask to approve, talking about some of the things that we're doing for professional development to be much more targeted, first focused on the personalizing, understanding the experience of kids, and trying to personalize the education experience that we provide to kids. So that's going to be a big part of it. And the data piece, the board authorized in the last budget increase our capacity with a research assistant to do that type of what I call user and data analysis. Don't give me a lot of stuff. Give me the stuff that's going to be beneficial to me. And because that's what we want. We want people to have information in their hands that's going to impact their decision-making, people, in this case, teachers in classrooms. So those are some of the next steps that we're in the process of doing. We have very rich curriculum. We have a great professional development provisions to our teachers, and now we're rounding out by our ability to analyze data and give it back in a format that's very user-friendly, to the end user, not only to students, not only teachers, but also students have a better sense of their performance. And that's why we had a great conversation about homework and grading and what information are we giving kids, what kind of feedback are we giving kids so they can understand their own progress and so they can become independent learners. So they kind of give a capstone of what we see as next steps, certainly not resting on our laurels.
There were some other charts that showed, individual schools.
Yes, between the next steps and the district one.
Yeah, there was a very small print.
There are 2 elementary pages because we put 4 schools on each page, and there's 1 middle school page. So you can see all the levels and the mean scaled scores for each of the grade levels.
A question occurred to me, because there was a considerable difference between one building and another. And intuitively, conventional wisdom-wise, I would say it's not the leadership, it's not the teachers. Is it the demographics? And if it is, what our guideline is generally to put our resources where the need is. Are we doing that?
Yes, and that's very much so. We function from a equity model and basically treat differences differently. If someone needs more, we give more. And so it's not an equal model. We're not giving everyone the same because we recognize that their needs are different. And so that's why I mentioned just briefly, because we have this conversation a bit more extensively when we review some of the key points on the goals document, that one of the things that we revisit, again, we constantly revisiting the process is again, looking at our models and making sure that enough services are following the needs. And so as we get better information, we make those adjustments. And that not only drive what we're doing this year, it's going to drive budget conversations and all those kind of things. So every year, it's an evolutionary process based upon information gained from the prior year's experience.
Mary, you had a question?
Yeah, Dr. Robinson, you talked about something that I noticed, and Bob did too, that the decreasing levels of 1s and 2s, increasing levels of 3s and 4s. And I find that trend important, and I'm glad about it. But I think it's interesting. We have to be careful. They're not 1s, 2s, 3s, and 4s. They're children, and we have to be careful on how we identify what we're trying to accomplish and on whose behalf, and what the range of talent and skill and interest is. And we have to not let them lose that, because that. They're not all going to be math whizzes. They're not all going to be English geniuses, but they all have a talent, and they all have something that they bring to their lives. So I want to be careful about that. And what we look at matters too. And we saw a slide where we were, I think, improving 1% and 4%, but we were improving on a 20% difference. And so what we look at matters too. That change looks, but the disparity is a huge benefit to us. And so I think, the data is interesting, it's important, it provides us with guidance on how we handle things, but we can never lose track of those little noses walking in the door in September with their brand new backpacks and their Linky sneakers or, whatever it is. That's not important to them. How do I feel in school is what matters to them.
Yeah. Just a quick comment then, Mr. Miller. Bob, you want to change to the next one? The board were here on the next board meeting. I'm a theme person. I'm sure you guys know that by now. And the theme for our goals document is, I guess the new generation is Generation Z. I don't make this stuff up. This is what it's called, Generation Z. And so our theme is going to be today's kindergartners, tomorrow's leaders. And it's very deliberate, back to Mrs. Blaber's point, that we always keep the personalization at the forefront of what we do. And so when we look at all those kind of things, we're talking about the engagements of kids, talk about the independent learners and trying to facilitate that process, and teachers, educators being facilitators. And so those things become important for us and stay at the forefront. So you'll see and hear a lot of these terms again once we do the goals presentation to the board, to make sure that our values and beliefs drive our actions. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Steve.
I just want to say really quickly too, when we were talking about refusals, opt-outs, I know in the last 2 years, and I do believe that number will go down. I think we have made tremendous effort from a district standpoint. I know Dr. Wood does amazing work trying to educate the public. And I think parents, teachers, I think we've all come together, as this will be an ongoing process as the years go on. And I think we will do better with that. I think knowledge is power in this case.
Thank you. Good. So the next piece that I want to share with the board, and again, we won't necessarily go through all the slides. They're more for redundancy and illustration. Something that we pay particular attention to, class size ranges, average ranges at the elementary level, and there's no scientific method, so to speak, to the ranges. Over the years, we have looked at basically our mins and max and try to stay within that footprint as much as we can in terms of that. And I say that because sometimes people perseverate on, oh my God, you said the max was 24 and we have 25. As I often tell, well, one person just have to make a decision to go to the sister school and we'll be under the max. Does it really make that much difference? Realistically, it doesn't, because we don't have overcrowded schools and overcrowded classes. So I just want to be very clear with that statement as we move forward. And the ranges were established by the board several years ago, again, as a guideline for us as we're planning our staffing and planning our section patterns. There's no, given piece of it, because you'll see here from Mr. Miller, we have some schools that are below the min, and it's a result of schools cater to certain geographic boundaries. And so, for instance, Chicago as a school has been reducing in enrollments over the years because of the housing stock in Chicago. They're not producing as many kids versus some of the other areas. And so we look at that, and we also then look at that and look at the potential of when do we need to redistrict to create a better balance. Right now, we won't be recommending any redistricting for 16, 17, but every year we look at the process and seeing where some of the shifting growth are. This is not a redistricting conversation. We have more of this in November when we look at enrollment patterns, but I think it's important for people to understand that we try to take advantage of the sister schools concept. In other words, the Sago, Scano, the Carrigon, Arenda, and for instance, when we have overflow at Chango, the overflow is to Carrigon because of the contiguous boundaries, neighborhood boundaries between those two schools. And so we have to look at all the big pieces and try to figure out how to create the best balance under those circumstances. And so that's important as we move through the process.
And again, like Dr. Robinson said, there's a lot of stuff that's in there. That's more just for an FYI for the board. This is the targets page. You're familiar with that. You've looked at it for a number of years. Again, just included for reference. This is really a synopsis of what we're seeing. This year we have 188 K through 5 homerooms or sections. 0 sections are over the maximum for the particular grade levels, and I'll just reference that when we look at some of the lines on the charts. Last year, also 0 sections were under the maximum. However, in 14-15, we had 6 sections over the maximum, and in 13-14, we had 10 sections over the maximum. So the trend there has been to reduce the number of classes that would go over the maximums at the particular levels and get it to a point where what you see last year and what you see so far this year, which are 0 sections that are over the max. 12 sections are at the maximum, and they're in a variety of places at a variety of grade levels. They're not in any one particular area. 176 sections are below the maximum as follows on my chart here. So we have 14 sections that have 1 student under the maximum. We have 31 that are 2 under, and we have 37 that are 3 under. And the significance of the 3 under is that's the middle ground of maximum, minimum, middle. So we have 37 sections that are 3 under, which is right smack in the middle of what those levels would be for each of those grade levels. We have 38 sections that are 4 under, 16 that are 5 under. We have 20 sections that are 6 under, and 6 under is the minimum that we look for a class, but we don't stop there. We have 12 sections that are 7 under, 4 that are 8 under, and 4 that are 9 under. So again, if the section is 3 under, it's on target. If it's 6 under, it's at the minimum. If it's 7 or more under, it's below the minimum.
So just a quick piece back to redistricting. If we see the trend under minimum keep going, we have to consider some, and right now, the 2 schools with the fastest decrease in overall enrollment, Carrigon and Tasago. And so, but we see growth in Arenda, ironically. So at some point, we have to figure out how do we create a rebalance effect. And I say that almost, quite frankly, deliberately, because the talk of redistricting just drive the public crazy, because everyone would think they could only have what they always had. But the reality of it is we have a responsibility for 4,600 K-12 students and trying to create the best balance. And I have a situation where we have a building with average class size, what I call the country club schools, with 18, and then we have a building with average class size is 26. You know, not that 26 is detrimental, but it could be a little nicer, closer to 18 if we possibly can, and create a better balance. And so our notion is a better balance, and it's not because something is detrimental, but because we want to make it better. And there's a big distinction between those two things. And so that's why we hesitate to redistrict for the sake of it, because we're not doing it because of a major problem, but we try to create a better balance over time, because this also feeds into our middle schools and create the imbalance potential in the middle schools as well, because different elementary schools feed to different middle schools. So again, just some backdrop context to it, that it's just more than average class size that we think about when we think about this these data points.
So the first slide just starts with kindergarten, and I'll give you the flavor of it for like 2 slides, and I think that's pretty good for that, and then you can see where it is. But let's, if you will, the pretty colored lines that are out here. If you want to do this, if you want to make a note on this page, this is probably the best place to do it. That's actually a red line. It kind of looked purple to me, so I kind of tried to do that to make it look like that. This is the kindergarten, first grade maximum number, which is 24. So that first line, and you'll see all the lines on every page. But the first line is the kindergarten, first grade maximum, which is 24. This is supposed to be an orange color. It kind of looks gold. That's 25. That's for second grade only. The green line here that says 26 is for third grade only. And then the blue line out here that says 27 is for fourth and fifth grade. So that's consistent on all the pages. So if you look here, you'll notice under kindergarten, there's no one at the maximum number.
So, Mr. Mayor, I just want to take advantage of this moment. We always hear one of the perennial comments is, why don't we have full-day K at Shen? We have 31 sections of half-day kindergarten. And so if you translate that, if we're going to go 4-day, you almost have to double the capacity. I say almost because the numbers are, as you see here, are below that, either one of two things: a major redistricting to create a better distribution for kindergarten, unless we do 31 more new spaces to extend the program, or go, and again, I mean, all kind of radical proposals, but it's important for people to understand that it's not simply just going to add new sections, because it requires more spaces to basically redistribute the sections further on.
So, but we
So it's
also
about
need
15,
to say,
17 new spaces.
we also need to say that when a child has a need
Yes.
for all-day kindergarten, they have the option
Yeah.
to be in all-day kindergarten.
And-
So it's an academic need.
Yeah, and one of the things we're going to present to the board probably early November is an update on our EDK program, looking at some data trends over the past couple of years so we can see numbers. And so, because we haven't done that for a while with the board, so we're going to look at that so the board can have that data in front of them as well. So Mr. Mayor just made a mental note of that.
The other caveat that I want to give to you is, this is what it was this morning. Okay?
Just now this time of year.
Ann Coors and the registrar isn't here today, so I'm confident that this will be good till tomorrow. Because, we'll have people coming in, and then we'll have
Right,
people leaving.
right.
So it's in flux, but we check these numbers weekly as we do it. And just to walk you through that, let's look at, yes.
If the numbers do, like, as, throughout the school year, we have kids coming to the district and the classes get bigger by 1 or 2 or sometimes more, and the numbers in each class get closer to the max or over, is it possible, like, would an aide be in that classroom to help?
It depends. We have, and our biggest dilemma is always what we call the off-site schools, Chango and Ate, because there's no sister component. There's no attached school to them. So we're doing it now. As new enrollees to the district, people are moving first time in the district, and Chango is our fastest growth area in terms of new residences. And so what we try to do is keep some capacity within buildings. So and plus we have enough data to show what has been the plus and minuses over the years. However, if we have, for instance, Chango is where we look at potential moving to Carrigan. However, that's as a last resort. What we try to do as much as possible, keep kids in their quote-unquote home schools. And so that's true to last resort. Several years ago, Chango particular grade level was pretty high, and we added aid support, not necessarily because of numbers, but because of the makeup of the student population. And sometimes you have a wider concentration of kids with various learning demands. And so and especially combined now with a larger number, it creates some dilemmas. And so we did that, but it's rare that we actually do that, because at the end of the day, what we're not going to do is pay someone just to stand in a space, just so we can say we had 4 adult bodies in there, because that doesn't impact on the quality of instruction. So we look at how instruction is being provided, because some places kids are being pulled out. You may have a class of 26, but it's rare that teacher's probably going to have all 26 all day, because some kids are going to be pulled out for this service, and that service. So we know that as we look at the configuration. But that's something we have exercised in the past, but it's not too often that we have to do that piece of it.
I was just curious, given our targets and so forth, should we at some point decide that we actually needed to have a section? Do we have the building capacity for additional classrooms?
Well, that varies again by schools. And some schools we do. Just say it this way, it's interesting. It's like your house. If you have an empty room, you fill it up with stuff. It's the same, it's no different in schools. There's an empty room, somebody's using it for something. So the question is, then we have to reprioritize use. But some buildings we don't. Some buildings we legitimately, they're all used for regular classrooms throughout the day. So that is somewhat of a concern, Gary, and that's the reason why in the bigger picture of redistricting, and sort of the last time we spoke about this, we talked about the maximum capacity that we would like to have in every building, and we use that 575 target for buildings. We have some buildings that are 420, and we have some buildings that are closer to 575. So that's a larger redistricting, because capacity becomes an issue in terms of where we look, where kids are going, and how we kind of carve the boundaries, so to speak, to accommodate that. But it has to be sustained over time. We don't make the adjustments because of a one-year blip. We look at, that's the reason why the board does, every year we do the census report in November. So we have Capital Region Planning Commission comes in and give us a good flavor of where live births are going and things of that nature, so we could make long-term decisions.
We also want to try to do an initial foray into a better mapping of all of the potential classroom space in the district over the next year, but that's going to take a little bit of work. I would also point out, now this is grade 1, so if you look, grade 1, the maximum line is 24, because again, that first line is K1. You'll see that one section in orange is 24, while the other ones are 22 and 23, so why wouldn't it be 24? That's a decision that's made inside the school, where you place, the principal places students in there. But you'll also notice that, Dr. Robinson mentioned Loretta's sections of first grade are all at 24. They're all at the maximum right now. But the sister school, Carrigon, has a little better room in there. First grade across the district's a little tight, all the way around, but we do have some room. Also, Chango, you'll notice Chango's numbers have dropped. That's because Mrs. Skarka redeployed a 4th grade FTE to first grade, and then that allowed us to take some displaced Chango students potentially in Carrigon back to Chango, and so those numbers will fill as the summer goes on. But that's kind of the ebb and flow of it. And what we try to do too is create, I don't want to use the word pool, it's not a deep pool, but create a pool at the sister schools. So if Orangen's tight at certain grade levels, Shattuckon's a little less. If Shattuckon's a little tight, Orangen's a little bit more room, and vice versa for all the other ones. So that's kind of how that rolls.
Yeah. Good.
And again, the lines are out there for the purposes of what they are for the different ones in there.
So Bob, before we wrap up, Mrs. Blaber, does this answer the question that you emailed me earlier about?
It does.
Okay.
That was my fault. But
Okay.
And not to make you think about it that much longer, but how does this arrangement compare to the census that we had in November?
The overall is close, because the census gives us a total number, the distribution becomes the game.
I'd just like to know how the census is tracking for accuracy.
I think it's close.
It's helpful.
It's helpful because the cohort survival piece of it is what's more beneficial. Kindergarten is always a big guess for us because, you know, how many kids went to private school, coming back, and all those kind of things. So we look at those pinch point grades, kindergarten, 6th grade, 9th grade, those transition years, transition schools, that's where we always see influx. But as Ms. Amelia pointed out, you know, we got the plus and minus data for many, many years, and we kind of start to get, where's our comfort feel? Where do we feel uncomfortable in terms of preparing for a potential influx that's going to go beyond that comfort zone? And again, and I don't want to prolong this, we'll transition to the next presentation here, is the targets or guidelines for us to have some sense of, okay, when we need to start planning for some decision, even staffing decision for future years. And so if we see certain trends of kids coming through the system, you know, what we call the big blips in the system, we have to start thinking about what's going to be the impact at future grades where we don't have the same capacity and those kind of things. And so we start either reallocating staffing from one grade level to the next, or as we have done in past years, add some staffing. And an interesting piece of it, just interesting point, and I'll send the board stats. Our staffing level in 2016 is actually about 20 teachers less than our staffing level in 2005-06. Yet we have, and so part of it is, quite frankly, you know, it's not a bragging statement, but I think we have collectively done a better job through processes like this to really understand the data and make decisions versus, quite frankly, in some cases, the decisions were based upon who screamed the loudest got the allocation versus I think over the past, I could say the past 10 years, 11 years, we have been much more process driven so we can anticipate and have predictive analytics to have some sense of what the next 3 or 4 or 5 years is going to be and plan for it. And so we talk about repurposing and re-leveraging staff and all those kind of things all the time through the budget process. And this is how it plays out. So we do more, and quite frank with you, I don't want to say do more or less, but do more and maintain similar capacity. Thanks, Bob.
Thanks, Bob. Our final information item is the district SAFE plan and safety update. Becky and Jay.
Good evening. The information that Jay and I will be presenting tonight will provide an update on the progress the district has made in regards to safety and provide guidance about the Safe Schools Against Violence and Education Act, and hopefully just to give you an overview of the SAFE committee and just give some background information. The SAFE committee meets approximately 3 times a year as needed. The committee members are approved annually by the Board of Education, and the list of committee members was provided to you tonight for board approval. Please note that there are student members listed there or may not be listed because we don't know who they are until school starts, as well as the board members may change. In addition, you are also provided a copy of the SAVE Initiative Building Administrator Communication Plan, which we used to call our Safety and Emergency Guidance document. For purposes of this meeting, it's important to note that that is an internal document only. That document is intended to provide the district with the critical concepts and components of Shenendehowa's crisis planning process and provide the framework for the district's crisis and emergency planning related practices. The document that you received tonight, which is the stapled document, that is divided up into 4 components, each representing an aspect of the emergency and planning cycle. And as you will see up here, that's how we divided the presentation into tonight. So to start off, I'll talk a little bit about the prevention and mitigation, which is in that top or left-hand corner. And basically, in this area of prevention and mitigation, we continue to do safety audits in our schools and across the district. This year specifically, Carrigan and Arenda and Chango had safety audits. In addition, excuse me, threat assessment policy and protocols were developed, and training for all staff was provided via department meetings and faculty meetings. I'll turn it over to Jay, and he can talk about the preparedness and response components.
Thank you, Becky. Yes, we prepare students and staff by holding trainings and conducting a variety of drills. These drills are lockdown drills, lockout
out drills, shelter in place, duck and cover, and our newest one, which is a hold in place. The administrators of a building can use this drill in the event of they want to stop the activity in a school to handle a medical emergency or a disturbance in the hallway. Along with the individual schools conducting drills, we also, as a district, conduct mass evacuation drills. We do these twice a year, basically in the spring and the fall. With Chango just last year conducting an active shooter drill, which involved their entire school population, many police agencies and our fire departments of Clifton Park and Round Lake associated with them, and they had to relocate their facility, which I'll speak about a little bit later. With every school that has an evacuation drill, we also conduct incident command trainings with them. That is done by our fire chief here or the state police. That they'll come in, they'll train the safety teams on the incident command systems. That's through the NIMS, National Incident Management System, and they're trained in different ways to handle an emergency through ICS. Also, this past year, the transportation facility conducted a fire drill, which is very interesting. We had a scenario base of a school bus catching on fire inside a mechanic's bay, which the entire population had to evacuate. There, we had to think of reasons how are we going to communicate. So that knocked out our dispatch center. That also inhibited us from getting bus keys. So we have certain systems in place where staff members are identified to grab certain items and reassemble into a different command post. Communications was reestablished and tested, and everything worked very well, very well. Schools, we also conducted this past year, which we call a tabletop drill. That was done by Raj and Shadakon. That's where the safety teams, police agencies, and fire will actually sit around the meeting table and discuss a scenario. The scenario we used there was a missing child. The police would ask what-if situations, and then the safety teams would have to reply, and also the safety teams would be able to ask the police in different situations how they would respond. Many lessons were learned at that, which helps forward our response actions going forward. Also this year we have created a best practices training presentation developed by Mrs. Carmen, Ian Feinstein, our health and safety BOCES representative, and myself. And what that does is that helps teach the school staff and safety teams on how to respond to different emergencies as far as our lockdowns and drills and how those trainings take effect. Going on, the security of our district is one of the highest priorities for our children, our staff, and our community. Our approach is that we maintain these standards to the highest levels possible, yet not to create a fortress within our schools to inhibit the learning process. Our main entrances are covered by surveillance cameras and buzz-in systems and pin pads at the entrances. For this year, we are expanding on several surveillance cameras at many other entrances and other locations around the district, and also adding 24 network pin pads for access controls at various entrances as well. The response items for our district safety is always ongoing and changing. Recently, the New York State Education Department issued us new mandates, where it's always been where we have tasked to conduct 12 fire drills a year. That has now changed. Now the state will require us to do 8 evacuation drills, which is actually a fire drill, and then 4 lockdown drills. With that, they've changed a few other things, which is definitions of safety teams. The building level safety teams now will be called response teams. And also types of training that staff will be required to have on an annual basis and new coming to the district. So what we also are doing, we're collaborating with our Human Resources Department, and we've put our presentations, our trainings on the websites for a scaled down version, but it's through the HASCOM portion, right to know law, so they're getting the trainings in those methods as well.
Good, thanks, Jay.
And just the last piece to mention here in the process is the recovery process, which what we've done this year is we have policy and regulation now that really speaks to crisis teams in the individual buildings and the training that they're supposed to receive, and a K-12 actually consistent process in regards to that. Jay also mentioned some trainings we have online. We continue to have threat assessment training that was developed by Michelle Mylod and myself, where that was shown to all staff at faculty meetings in addition to department meetings. That really talks about if there's a potential threat to self or to others or a targeted threat, what do you do? How should you respond? So that's also another training component. One thing, the last piece that I wanted to mention is you were all provided this little handout.
The Board of Education is committed.
Sorry.
You were provided that handout, and that handout reflects what the new mandates are that were put out from educational law updates. And what we did is we created this document as a result of Jay's, Ian and myself and Jen Cornell from Human Resources really working together to say, what are these new mandates? How are we meeting them? Are we meeting them? And what we have found is that we're really far ahead of the game in regards to what some of the mandates are now. We're already meeting those mandates and exceeding them and actually, moving forward. So, and we continue to move forward with safety across the district.
So one of the things I just want to show briefly, because we have paper plans, and the plans are only good as the training and application. And we're moving, for the purpose tonight, we have paper, but everything is now moving towards online because we want people to be able to access it on their own time and multiple times. And also, again, kudos to Mr. Turtelot, Mrs. Carmen, and Mrs. Malad, particularly leading this initiative of a threat assessment process. Because, again, we're trying to figure out how much in advance can we be aware of things so we can either try to prevent and or mitigate impact. So this video is one that's used. Go ahead.
Before you press play, just let me reiterate. Again, and Dr. Robinson actually created an incredible visual, which I think you guys have seen before, but we're not talking about a threat to our system in regards to a bomb threat or a gas leak or a fire. We're talking about a threat to self or to others, which we never really had a solid K-12 consistent process in place, and now we have that and created the video as a result, which is part of the new mandate, and we were a year ahead of that. So that's what this is.
The Board of Education is committed to maintaining an environment that is safe and secure for all students, staff, faculty, and visitors. As part of this commitment, the respective building principal, in consultation with the superintendent, shall annually designate a crisis team to provide ongoing support and information in order to identify any potential threats to safety with the intent of minimizing and managing acts of violence in the school community. Following the Columbine High School massacre on April 20th, 1999, Education Law 2801-A was enacted, requiring every school district to develop a district-wide school safety plan that targets crisis intervention and emergency response, and requires schools to develop a process to respond and intervene when a threat is made to a school system, building, or individual. In order to maintain an environment that is safe for all students and staff, the district has developed safety teams and crisis teams to prevent and respond to school emergencies. Each school has a safety team that responds to a threat to the system, for example, a gas leak, bomb threat, or fire. And each school has a crisis team that responds to a catastrophic event that impacts students and or staff in a building, such as a death or accident. In addition to catastrophic events, building crisis teams are responsible for responding to a student who has been identified as having the potential for targeted violence. Targeted school violence is defined as any incident of violence where a known or knowable attacker selects a particular target prior to their attack. The building administrator or designee has the authority to make decisions regarding the safety of the building, which includes the appointment and facilitation of the building crisis team. The United States Secret Service and United States Department of Education studied the thinking, planning, and other pre-attack behaviors of the attackers of the 37 incidents of targeted school violence in the United States between December 1974 and May 2000, seeking to answer two questions. Could we have known these attacks were being planned? And if so, what could we have done to prevent them from occurring? The results indicated that incidents of targeted violence at school are rarely sudden, impulsive acts. Prior to most attacks, people knew about the attacker's idea and or plan to attack. Most attackers did not threaten their targets directly prior to advancing the attack. There is no accurate or useful profile of students who engage in targeted school violence. Most attackers engage in some behavior prior to the incident that caused concern or indicated a need for help. Most attackers were known to have difficulty coping with significant losses or personal failures. Many considered or attempted suicide. Many attackers felt bullied, persecuted, or injured by others prior to the attack. Most attackers had access to and had used weapons prior to the attack. In many cases, other students were involved in some capacity. And finally, despite prompt law enforcement responses, most shooting incidents were stopped by means other than law enforcement intervention. Findings of this study and their implications were used to develop the Threat Assessment Protocol Guidelines to identify, assess, and manage possible targeted school violence.
In the spring of 2014, a district committee comprised of psychologists, counselors, social workers, behavior specialists, and district administration was formed to review current policies and practices within the district. The committee surveyed key stakeholders and reviewed current research to create a document that would provide a clear process for staff to follow when an individual student presents a comment, communication, or behavior that could be construed as a threat against self or another. The committee revised policy 5684 with an emphasis on the creation of the 5684 regulation and 5684 forms to ensure a consistent process to identify, assess, and manage student indicators of potential targeted violence. What is staff required to do? All staff need to report specifics of any comments, communications, or behaviors of concern to the principal or designated building administrator, including but not limited to a student comment that they are going to kill him or herself, a student comment that they are going to get a student after school, or a student drawing of a picture of a gun or violence that is outside the context of the educational activity. After the concern is expressed to the principal, the concern will be documented and a determination will be made about whether or not the student poses a potential threat for targeted violence. If the concern or combination of concerns suggests to the principal that the student is on the path to targeted violence, the principal will convene the crisis team. The following are examples of expressions of interest to do harm, which may be communicated by a student in the following modalities: written threats, such as emails, social media posts, writings, pictures, or a hit list; physical gestures, such as enacting violence towards another; and physical actions, such as bringing a weapon to school or direct physical aggression towards another. Expressions of interest to do harm may be conditional, veiled, indirect, or direct. An example of a conditional threat is, if you don't do this, I will do this. An example of a veiled threat is, we would be better off without Johnny anymore. An example of an indirect threat is, someone is going to die, or being in possession of a weapon. An example of a direct threat is, Johnny is going to die tomorrow.
What happens when a principal determines a student's comments, communications, or behaviors suggest that the student poses a threat of targeted school violence? In these cases, the principal will convene the crisis team to gather and review information from a variety of sources to assess the level of threat. A response management plan will be created to support the student and mitigate the potential for violence. The student is monitored and supported. When the student is deemed to no longer pose a threat for targeted school violence, the plan will be discontinued.
Each building crisis team will be trained in conducting threat assessments using the district protocol and forms linked with the Board of Ed Policy 5684. Updated training will be conducted annually. Training will take place with district support staff, such as aides, monitors, cafeteria staff, office staff, and transportation. New teacher orientation will include a presentation of the threat assessment overview for district personnel. And finally, threat assessment policy and supplementary information will be included in the faculty handbook.
For questions related to any information you have
heard today, please contact Becky Carmen or Michelle Mylod.
Thank you. Any questions for the board? Gary?
During the last year, I've been part of the BOCES crisis team and safety team. And prior to that, had absolutely no exposure to it whatsoever and absolutely no expertise. I can't claim to have a lot of it right now either. But it has exposed me to some of the requirements that you were talking about. And because of the changes that were implemented and so forth, the idea of having some kind of a module component training in service renewable type thing came to the forefront, and I brought this to Dr. Robinson's attention. He assured me that you had indeed already addressed this, and it looks great. I will hope that you'll share that with some of the people down at BOCES. But aside from overt verbal expressions, specific behavior that might result in an aggressive act, a violent act, I'm wondering whether the scope of training also addresses the idea of recognizing people who have authority resentment issues, that sort of thing that might cause them to act out violently. And I'm a little concerned with the level of the sequence of events that has to take place, meetings and so forth, and evaluations and so forth, before you can actually respond. Is there a more abbreviated, more immediate, at least conditional response, even though you may not full-blown, full court press,
It clearly depends on the immediacy of the issue. Right. And the graveness of the issue. And so, we could go from 0 to 60. It depends on the situation. And also, we also want to ensure due care between a child who, quite frankly, might be depressed about something that needs a certain support versus. So that's why we have that process in place as well to make sure that we're keeping the child best interests in mind, as well as the larger population as well. So yes, I think that you hit the nail on the head in terms of that process. Another thing, and again, kind of sound like a preview to a TV show, but the board will hear one of the objectives for our district goals is to actually also start looking at data trends, to start seeing if we see certain students with certain behavior patterns, and trying to use that as an indication of, because typically when, we have, I hate to say it, we have this term called, there's certain kids who are frequent flyers, who are often having disruptive behaviors. And so part of that is that in those, not only there's a typical disciplinary course, but we also try to provide that support, psychological support, counseling support. And so the question that we always have to wonder is, if all these things are not working, is there something else beyond what the obvious? And so is there some additional intervention, be it outside intervention or otherwise? And also then trying to make that distinction between, the kid who has a defiance behavior that you kind of described versus the kid who has some legitimate mental supports. In many cases, we see that they're all one and the same. And so how do we try to most effectively address the root cause and not just react to the symptoms, if you will? And so that's why we have those processes to make sure that people aren't unfairly or unduly disciplining kids because of certain things.
How broadly or proliferated, shall we say, this awareness of, the ability to recognize the components of, behavior that isn't quite what it ought to be, spot off, whatever.
But, one of the things that we know now, one, we have a pretty extensive code of conduct document. And so every teacher, every parent, every student is aware of it. And so that document triggers when something's happened, a reporting mechanism. And so you got to think of that as one entry point into this world of threat assessment. And so that's widely used and known, and by law we have to distribute to every, and it's on the calendars everywhere. So that's one trigger point. This process here in the video piece of it is an ongoing training piece. And so have we saturated our employee base as much as we would like? Yes, no, because we're in the process of doing so. And that's why, as you noted here, even new teachers coming on board, right away we introduce them to this concept. Having this online, people can always access it otherwise. Every year, principals do a mandatory, there's certain mandatory policies legally that we have to disclose to staff, as well as some that we, district, have added to this mandatory list, and the threat assessment is one of those things. So minimally, ignorance is no longer an excuse in terms of I didn't know we had this threat assessment process protocol. So awareness is our first step. There's certain staff that are certainly much more invested in it, psychologists, our counselors, our social workers, those people, because those are often the front line that's dealing with kids in crisis. And so certainly they have a greater investment than, you want to say, the typical classroom teacher, but we certainly want the awareness to be everybody's part. And that's even why tonight here at this board meeting, we chose to show this. So there's even the public awareness that we have this, and this threat assessment. It's a YouTube thing that's out there that people could always access and use. So I think your question, Gary, it's ongoing, and it needs to be ongoing. It's not a one and done.
That, and make sure that it isn't, too narrow in its scope, that we're throwing a big net out to make sure that we're aware of, potential needs of students, and more than the actual threat, but hopefully by catching the bigger need, we also are definitely going to catch the potential threat.
And just a last comment, and I promise, Mr. Casey, not to prolong too much. Mrs. Baber sent me an email today, which I think has a valid point to this. Last 14-15 planning for 15-16, the board approved the establishment of a partnership with Saratoga Center for the Family to provide families with access to mental health supports. And basically, we're a host site. We're not the practitioners, the providers of the services. We just simply having a site. In fact, there's an item on the board to make the amendment to the last year's contract so we can make sure that compensation flows away, because it was a pilot. We weren't sure how the payments are actually going to work when we started planning it, but now that we do, we want to make the amendments. But the point here is that even within that process provides opportunities for kids to get mental health supports, and has it prevented something? We don't know, because and we hope that, quite frankly, we never know, because we hope that the services are providing the supports to kids. However, while there's a clear distinction between their service provisions and our service provisions, just like in any mandated reporter situation, if there's something that has the potential for grave and imminent danger, we'll know, and we'll be able to act upon it as well. And so in even some cases, there are kids who we identify, and we talk to the family saying, your kid probably could use some mental health supports, and if you don't have counseling outside, private counseling outside, here's the avenue, and that's the reason why we have that. So again, it's kind of a multi-pronged approach to try to provide supports for kids, because at the end of the day, that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to create healthy kids so they could have a healthy experience. It's not necessarily, so we're trying to prevention through health and wellness, if you will. So that's another dimension to the program, and we're looking to make sure that we can continue and expand that. So we're talking to that group in terms of what's going to be the arrangement for the coming years as well. So just another dimension to what we're trying to do as a district.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So that's it for me, Mr.
So we
Casey.
move on to consent items and action items. Actually, these will move fairly quickly. Can I have a motion to approve the consent items, treasurer's report, and the minutes of July 12?
So move.
Gary, second. Mary, all those in favor? Aye. Thank you. Action items. The first action item is adoption of the 2016-2000 tax levy. We saw that information previously. Can I have a motion to adopt the tax levy as recommended? Deanna, a second? It's got to be one of you two. Gary? Any questions or comments? All those in favor? Bids for school supplies, elementary school supplies, snacks, groceries. Can I have a motion to adopt that one? Mary, second. Deanna, All those in favor? Motion carries. Can we have a motion to adopt action items 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 together, which are service contracts, most of them in the mental health area? Mary, motion. Second, Gary. Any questions or comments? I do want to make one comment. Just sometimes people say, gee, $164 million budget, what are you doing there? So one of these items is a contract for special education tuition. And we know about those cases. We see them. Just so when people ask a question, what goes into that budget? These contracts in total affect 31 students. It's $1,228,000. So when you look at a $164 million budget, there's a check line in that. Not arguing that we shouldn't be doing that, but it is a component that's a mandated requirement, and we're not holding back on it. We're doing, I hope, we're doing, based on recommendations, we get the right thing.
I did have a question about 2 of the contracts, Dr. Robinson. I think you said you were going to.
Mrs. Mylott is here.
Thanks, Michelle.
So one of the contracts is our usual group who provides occupational and physical therapy to students within Shenendehowa, and also our homeschool students and our non-public students within district. The other contract is for occupational therapy for a student who attends a school outside of Shen. And so that agency already contracts with that school.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Sorry. All those in favor? Motion carries. Can we have a motion to accept the scholarship and local grant donations?
With gratitude.
With gratitude, yes. Mary. Second, Deanna. Any questions or comments? All those in favor? Motion carries. We move on to the service agreement with Ronco. As I understand it, that's like for the school district this size, it gives us an emergency response if we need it, and it's a contract that we're able to tie into a state contract and actually save some money. Can I have a motion for that service agreement with Ronco? Mary. Second, Gary. Any questions or comments? All those in favor? Motion carries. We move on to the approval of the issuance of the RFP for sale of property. Let me get a motion on that, and then I want to just discuss something. Can we get a motion? Gary, a second. Deanna, what I want to suggest is, based on the thoughtful comments that we had tonight, and I did mention the board. I had some calls from people today, and they wondered, why we're rushing this, and I don't think we're rushing it. We've done some extensions in the spring. We did some in July, but this recommendation we have includes a date of receipt of the RFP of around September 30th. Let me suggest that we consider moving that a month, making that October, at the end of October. It gives additional time. I think one question was, well, why don't you wait till a full board is here and then decide that? Well, because it leaves people up in the air. The town has advised us that they're trying to get here. They're not there yet. They may not get there. We've also got private sector people who are anxious on this. And finally, this isn't one of those things that just sits on the shelf and, this is a good time to do it. As the board will recall, and maybe the public doesn't know, we've talked about what the needs of this district are, and the need isn't to get, 1.5 million. If we don't get it, our budget's going to be broken. We want to designate these funds to go in our capital reserve fund and to look at the possibility of acquiring some property for potential growth, and probably in the town of Half Moon, where we've talked earlier about that growth. So there is an impact down the road, but I think if you'd agree, slipping a month would give some more time to this, but we need a deadline. This has moved a couple times already. So can I get a motion?
The 31st?
To make it accept the RFP recommendation, but receive the RFPs no later than October 31st.
At 11 a.m.
At 11 a.m. 2016, as opposed to September 30th, 2016.
So would you modify your
motion?
Oh, yes, absolutely.
So can I just add one thing, just for the board's purposes? So the RFP will go October 31st, which means the board would look to potentially award at the November 8th business meeting. So we have a time
review process.
So we do, exactly.
Yep.
And then there's a review
But
process.
it goes out as proposed tomorrow.
Yes, correct.
Yeah.
Just one comment, Bill. So say this, I'm just putting it out there, say this happens again and we are not extending again. We're going to try to.
This is,
This
we're
is it.
being very clear.
Okay,
This is 2.5 months from
I
now.
agree with you.
Okay?
And this is open to whatever entity
That's correct.
has an interest.
Thank you.
Any
Absolutely.
entity that has an interest.
Or any
Municipal,
combination of
private, or
entities.
combination.
Yep.
Sounds good.
So I think we've got the motions and the seconds. All those in favor? Motion carries. We'll explain that to our other board members. And finally, on approval, we have approval of the district SAVE plan and the SAVE committee. We just had the presentation on that. We've got the paper on the committee. Can I have a motion to accept that? Gary, second. Deanna, any questions or comments? We're glad we're doing it. All those in favor? Motion carries. Move on to special ed placements. Michelle? We've got those. Mary made a motion. As you were walking, I thought she was waving to you, but that was a motion. A second. Deanna, any questions or comments from Mike?
Thank you for changing that.
Thank you, Michelle. All those in favor? Motion carries. Mrs. Bush will come up to deal with personnel, approval of staffing recommendations, and approval of the organizational chart. They kind of all fit together. Can I have a motion to accept them? Mary, second. Gary, any questions or comments? Dr. Bush? Are you up to date on things? How
Yes.
many?
We are about 35 new teachers at this point with some of the ones that are tonight. And we do have Mr. Lucas Lebert, who was actually appointed at the last board meeting, was not able to attend. He's our new class assistant principal at the high school, and he is in the audience this evening. So if Lucas would stand up. We want to welcome to Shenendehowa.
Welcome.
Welcome.
He's already here. He's already here.
Yes, he already started, actually,
Yeah.
so we're glad. And there were 3 retirements that are upcoming. I
Okay.
usually point those out. Classified staff, Nancy Chaplin is at Sago school monitor after 25 years. She's retiring first day of school. Linda I will not say it right, Salvaggio, she's retiring after 16 years in food service. And Linda Shavi is retiring from Carrigon after 25 years, and she's in the attendance office at Carrigon. So those are the retirements that are up and coming.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So the motion is for both items 1 and 2 under personnel. All those in favor? Motion carries. We move on to policies and procedures for second reading. Mrs. Carmen is back up here. Becky, I just have one comment on one. I think it's 4410R. Well, it's in 2 places. There's a comment in one of these that talks about having a public hearing. It's not clear it's an annual public hearing, but have we done that?
So going through the process
On
is.
code of conduct,
Yes,
yes,
so
yes,
going
I'm
through the
sorry.
process is the public hearing. What we have done is actually we've done this earlier. In the past, we've always done it later, but the irony of it is we print the code of conduct in the summer, and we were having a hearing, the public thing, after the code of conduct was already printed. So that's why this is a little bit different.
Okay,
So going through the first and the second reading is the opportunity to engage in, because between the first and second reading, we have a board meeting. So if there's any comments, provide that opportunity to do so. So it's just a matter, we just push that timeline up in August versus in the past, we've done this in September.
Thank you. Can I have a motion to accept these? Gary, second. Mary? Any other questions or comments on policy? All those in favor? Motion carries. Thank you.
I just FYI, I sent you the summer school information for graduation. So you
Thanks.
have that.
This part of the meeting is another opportunity for any comments by the public, the same rules and guidelines that we used before. I ask if anybody would like to speak. Not seeing any, we'll move toward adjournment. Before we get a motion for adjournment,
Just confirm,
Yeah.
summer school graduation is Thursday, August 18th, 6:30, High School West Auditorium.
and our next board meeting is, there's a board retreat at 4 o'clock on Tuesday, August 23rd, and then we'll move to a study session at 6 p.m. It's part of, we annually get together to assess how we're doing and talk about where we're going. And then in September, the meetings are the 13th and the 27th. Could I have a motion for adjournment? Gary, second. We got it. All those in favor? Thanks, Steve.
Thanks for sitting in, Mr. Case.
Nice job.
Meeting's adjourned.